I knew it was over the minute my own daughter pointed at the folding table in the corner and told me I could sit over there. That sentence hit me harder than a physical slap ever could. It was Thanksgiving and the house smelled like roasted turkey and sage stuffing and expensive candles that Linda liked to burn to impress the neighbors. I had been up since 4 in the morning making my famous sweet potato casserole and the pecan pie that everyone claims is their favorite but nobody ever bothers to learn how to bake. My back was screaming at me. It felt like someone had taken a hammer to my spine and my feet were swollen inside my sensible shoes, but I did not care because this was family. This was what you do for family. You show up. You cook. You smile until your face hurts. But standing there in the middle of Linda's fancy dining room with a crystal chandelier sparkling overhead, I felt something inside me break.
It was a quiet break.
It was not a loud crash like a dropped plate. It was the sound of a heart finally giving up after years of trying to be enough. Linda was rushing around like a chicken with its head cut off. She was wearing this tight red dress that looked great on her, but she was sweating through her makeup. She had invited her husband Mark's boss and his wife plus some neighbors I had never met, and of course Mark's parents were there too. Mark's parents are nice enough folks, but they have money. Real money. They show up with a bottle of wine that costs more than my monthly grocery budget, and they sit on the sofa while everyone waits on them hand and foot. I had walked in the door an hour earlier with my arms full of Tupperware. I did not even get a hello. I just got a door swung open and Linda yelling at me to hurry up because the oven timer was going off. I put my purse down on the entryway bench, and before I could even take off my coat, Linda shoved a bag of potatoes in my hands and told me to get peeling. So that is what I did. I peeled. I chopped. I stirred gravy that was starting to clump because Linda was too busy trying to find the right playlist on her phone. I washed the fancy appetizer plates while Mark sat in the living room watching the football game with his dad and his boss. I could hear them laughing and shouting at the TV. I could hear the ice clinking in their glasses. Nobody asked if I wanted a drink. Nobody asked if I needed a chair. It used to be different. I remember when my husband Frank was alive. God rest his soul. Our house was the gathering place. It was small, and the carpet was worn down, but when you walked in the door you were the most important person in the world. Frank would take your coat, and I would put a drink in your hand before you could blink. We sat at the head of the table. Not because we demanded it, but because that is where the parents sat. That is where the history was. But Frank has been gone for 6 years now, and slowly, but surely I have been fading away. It started small. First it was just them asking me to bring more dishes. Then it was asking me to come early to help set up. Then it was asking me to watch the grandkids while the adults had cocktail hour. And now here I was. The dining room table looked beautiful. It was set for 12 people. There were gold napkins and fresh flowers and name cards written in calligraphy. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked over to see where I was sitting. I wanted to see if I was next to Mark or maybe next to Linda, so we could catch up. I walked around the table reading the names. Mark's boss. The boss's wife. Mark's dad. Mark's mom. The neighbors. Linda.
Mark.
The list went on. I circled the table twice. My name was not there. I felt a cold panic start in my stomach. Maybe she forgot. Maybe the card fell on the floor. Linda flew into the room carrying a basket of rolls. She looked stressed out of her mind.
Linda, honey, I said.
I think you forgot my place card. She did not even look at me. She was busy arranging the rolls, so they looked perfect. Oh, Mom, she said. Her voice was dismissive, like she was talking to a child who was asking too many questions. We ran out of room at the main table. The chairs are really wide, and we could not squeeze another one in without everyone bumping elbows. I looked at the table. There was plenty of room. If everyone scooted just an inch, there would be space for me. So where am I sitting? I asked. She pointed. She did not use words at first. She just gestured with her chin toward the corner of the room near the kitchen door. There was a small card table set up there. It was one of those flimsy ones with the vinyl top. There was no tablecloth. There were no flowers. There were 3 folding chairs and a high chair.
You can sit over there, she said.
With the kids. I looked at the kids' table. My grandkids are sweet. I love them more than life itself. But the oldest is 7 and the youngest is 2. They were already over there throwing rolls at each other and screaming about a video game. "You want me to sit at the kids' table?" I asked. My voice was quiet. Linda sighed. She finally looked at me, and I saw the annoyance in her eyes. She was annoyed that I was making this difficult. She was annoyed that I was not just accepting my place.
"Mom, please do not make a scene," she said.
"Someone has to watch them, anyway. If I put you at the main table, then Mark and I have to keep getting up to cut their meat and wipe their faces, and we really need to impress Mark's boss tonight. It is a big deal for his promotion. Just help me out, okay? You are better with the kids, anyway." She did not wait for an answer. She turned around and walked back into the kitchen to get the turkey. I stood there frozen. It was not about the chair. I have sat on the floor. I have sat on crates. I have sat on the back of pickup trucks. I do not need a throne. It was about what the chair meant. It meant I was not a guest. It meant I was not an elder. It meant I was staff. I was unpaid help. I was a babysitter who happened to be related to the hostess. I looked over at Mark's parents. They were laughing at something the boss said. They were sitting in the plush dining chairs with the gold napkins in their laps. They're the same age as me. Actually, Mark's dad is 3 years older. But they have money. They have a beach house. They send big checks for birthdays. I have a fixed income. I knit sweaters. I bake pies. I give my time because that is all I have left to give. And apparently my time was not worth a seat at the table. I walked over to the folding table and sat down. The chair was hard and cold metal. It wobbled a little bit on the hardwood floor. The 2-year-old, Benny, looked at me and smeared mashed potatoes all over his face.
"Y grandma es gramat."
"Hi, baby," I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. The dinner started. Linda brought out the turkey, and everyone clapped. Mark stood up and made a toast. He raised his wine glass. The crystal caught the light. "I want to thank everyone for being here," he said. "Family is the most important thing in the world. We are so blessed to have this table full of people we love." Everyone said cheers and clinked their glasses. Nobody looked at the corner. Nobody raised a glass to the folding table. I was busy trying to stop Benny from choking on a piece of turkey. The 7-year-old, Sarah, knocked over her juice, and it went all over my skirt.
"Oh no, Grandma," she said.
"It is okay, honey," I said. I grabbed a napkin and started dabbing at the stain. It was grape juice. That was never coming out. I looked up while I was wiping my skirt. I saw Linda laughing at something the boss's wife said. She looked radiant. She looked happy. She did not look like she missed her mother at all. That is when the thoughts started coming. The dark thoughts that I usually push away. I thought about all the times I babysat for free so they could go on vacation. I thought about the time Linda was sick and I moved in for 2 weeks to clean her house and cook her meals and wash her laundry. I thought about the college fund I set up for these kids with the little bit of money Frank left me. I realized I had trained them to treat me this way. I had always said yes.
I had always said, "I do not mind."
I had always said, "Put me anywhere, I am just happy to be here." I made myself small so there would be more room for them. And they took that room and filled it up and then asked for more. The dinner went on for an hour. The adults were having a great time. They were talking about politics and real estate and the stock market. I was cutting meat into tiny squares. I was wiping noses. I was picking up dropped forks. My food was cold. I had barely taken a bite. "Hey, Mom," Linda called out from the big table. She did not even turn her whole body. She just turned her head slightly. "Can you get some more wine from the kitchen? Mark is empty." The table went silent for a second. Even Mark looked a little embarrassed. But he did not say anything. He did not say, "Get it yourself, Linda." He did not say, "Let Mom eat." He just held up his glass. I looked at my plate. I looked at the cold stuffing and the congealed gravy. I stood up. My knees popped. My back throbbed. I walked into the kitchen. It was a disaster zone. Pots and pans were piled high in the sink. Grease was splattered on the stove. The trash can was overflowing. I found the bottle of wine on the counter. It was a heavy red blend. I stared at the label. I could walk back out there. I could pour the wine. I could sit back down at the kids' table and finish my cold turkey. I could wait until dessert and serve the pie I baked. I could do the dishes after everyone left. That is what the old Martha would do. The nice Martha. The Martha who wanted everyone to like her. But something had shifted. I put the wine bottle down on the counter. I did not open it. I walked over to the sink and washed my hands. The water was warm, and it felt good on my aching joints. I dried them on a dish towel that I had embroidered for Linda 3 Christmases ago. I walked out to the hallway. I could hear the chatter from the dining room. They had moved on to talking about their summer plans. They were renting a house in the Hamptons. They were wondering if the house had enough bedrooms for everyone. I wonder if we should bring your mom, Mark said. His voice carried because the house had high ceilings. Linda laughed. It was a nervous laugh.
I do not know, she said.
She is getting older. She slows us down. Plus, she hates the beach. She would probably be happier staying home. We can just have her watch the dog. I stood there by the coat rack. I felt like I had been punched in the gut.
She slows us down.
She can watch the dog. I put on my coat. It is a nice wool coat that Frank bought me 20 years ago. It is a little out of style, but it is warm, and it still has all its buttons. I picked up my purse. I walked back to the doorway of the dining room. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I just stood there until someone noticed me. It was Mark's boss who saw me first. He stopped talking and looked confused. Then Linda turned around. She saw me in my coat with my purse over my shoulder. Mom, she said. What are you doing? Where is the wine? I ain't getting the wine, Linda, I said. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. I never use slang like that. I am a retired school teacher. I speak proper English. But right now I needed them to hear me. I needed to sound different.
Excuse me, Linda said.
Her face turned bright red. I said I ain't getting the wine, I repeated. And I ain't clearing the table. And I ain't watching the kids anymore. Linda stood up. She looked furious. She looked like I was embarrassing her in front of the important people.
Mom, sit down, she hissed.
You are making a scene. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the little girl I used to rock to sleep.
I saw the teenager I taught to drive.
I saw the woman I comforted when she had her heart broken. And I saw a stranger. No, I said. I will not sit down. And I definitely will not sit over there. I pointed to the folding table. I am your mother, Linda. I am the reason you are breathing. I wiped your bottom, and I paid for your college, and I held your hand when you gave birth to those children. I am not the help. I am not the dog sitter. And I am certainly not someone you put in the corner, because you want to impress people who do not genuinely care about you. Mark stood up now. He looked angry. Martha, come on, he said. We're just having dinner. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic, I said. I let out a short, dry laugh. You think this is dramatic, Mark? Dramatic is realizing that my family only tolerates me when I am serving them. Dramatic is realizing that I am invisible until you need something. I looked at the boss and his wife. I am sorry to interrupt your evening, I said. The turkey is delicious. I should know because I bought it and I prepped it. But I think I have lost my appetite. Mom, stop it, Linda said. Her voice was shaking now. You are ruining Thanksgiving. No, honey, I said. I am saving myself. I turned around and walked toward the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to turn back. Part of me wanted to apologize and beg for forgiveness and go sit at the kids' table, just so I would not be alone. Being alone is scary when you are 72. The silence of an empty house is heavy. But being lonely in a room full of people is worse. It is 1,000,000 times worse. I opened the front door. The cold air hit my face, and it felt like freedom. Mom, wait, Linda yelled. She was running down the hallway now. You can't just leave. Who is going to watch the kids? We haven't even had pie yet. That was the kicker. She didn't ask who was going to hug me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked about the kids and the pie. I turned around one last time. I stood on the porch. The kids are yours, Linda, I said. You watch them. And the pie is on the counter. I suggest you learn how to slice it yourself. I walked down the steps. I got into my old sedan. It is a 10-year-old Buick that smells like peppermint and old paper. I turned the key, and the engine sputtered to life. I saw Linda standing in the doorway. She looked small. She looked confused. She looked like she honestly did not understand what had just happened. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I did not look back. I drove. I did not know where I was going at first. I just knew I had to get away from that house. I had to get away from the feeling of being a piece of furniture. I drove toward the city. The streets were empty because everyone was at dinner. I saw houses with warm yellow lights in the windows. I saw families gathered around tables. Tears started rolling down my face. I let them fall. I cried for the years I had wasted trying to buy their love with service. I cried for Frank because he would have never let this happen. I cried because I was hungry and tired and my feet hurt. But under the tears there was something else. There was a fire. A tiny little spark that had been buried under piles of laundry and dirty dishes for years. I respected myself. For the first time in a long time, I had chosen me. I pulled into a diner about 20 minutes later. It was one of those 24-hour places with neon signs and chrome stools. It was the only thing open. I walked inside. It smelled like bacon and coffee. There were a few truckers at the counter and a couple of police officers in a booth. The waitress was a young girl with pink hair and a nose ring. She looked tired. "Just one?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Just one." "Sit anywhere you like," she said. I looked around. There were empty booths everywhere. There were tables by the window. There was a spot right at the counter. I did not have to sit in the corner. I did not have to sit by the bathroom. I walked over to the best booth in the house. It was right by the window, with a view of the city lights. The seat was red vinyl, and it was soft. I sat down. I spread my coat out next to me. I put my purse on the table. The waitress came over with a menu. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said. She gave me a sad smile. "It sucks to be alone on the holidays, huh?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. She was working while everyone else was celebrating. She was tired, but she was kind. "I ain't alone, honey," I said. I smiled back, and it was a real smile. I am with the only person who has had my back all these years. Myself. She looked surprised, but she smiled back. "What can I get you?" she asked. I looked at the menu. I did not want turkey. I did not want stuffing. "I want a burger," I said. "A big one with cheese and bacon. And a milkshake. Chocolate. And bring me a slice of whatever pie you have that is fresh." She laughed. "You got it," she said. I sat there and watched the cars go by. My phone started buzzing in my purse. I knew it was Linda. I knew she was calling to yell, or maybe to guilt-trip me. Or maybe she was calling because the baby was crying and she did not know where the pacifier was. I took the phone out of my purse. I looked at the screen. It was Linda. I pressed the button on the side of the phone. The one that turns it off completely. The screen went black. The silence was beautiful. I ate my burger. It was greasy and salty and delicious. It was the best meal I had eaten in years because I did not have to get up once to get anyone a refill. I did not have to cut anyone's meat. I ate at my own pace. When I finished, the waitress brought the check. I reached for my wallet, but then I stopped. I looked at the waitress. "What is your name, honey?" I asked. "Chloe," she said. "Well, Chloe," I said, "I want to leave you a tip." I took out a $100 bill. It was the money I was going to put in a card for Linda's birthday next week. "This is for you," I said. Her eyes went wide. "Ma'am, I can't take this," she said. "That is too much." "Take it," I said. "Buy yourself something nice. And call your grandmother if you have one. Tell her you love her. But do not ask her to cook you dinner." She took the money, and her eyes filled up with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. I walked out of that diner feeling 10 feet tall. I drove home to my small house. It was quiet. It was dark. But when I walked inside, it felt like a castle. It was my space. My rules. I took off my shoes and rubbed my feet. I put on my favorite fuzzy robe. I turned on the TV to a show I wanted to watch, not football, not cartoons. I fell asleep on the sofa with a smile on my face. But the next morning is when the real war began. I woke up to someone banging on my front door. It was loud and aggressive. I looked at the clock. It was 8 in the morning. I wrapped my robe tight around me and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Linda, and she did not look happy. She looked like a storm cloud ready to burst. I unlocked the door and opened it. She pushed past me without even asking. She marched into my living room and spun around. "Are you insane?" she yelled. "Do you have any idea what you did last night?" I closed the door slowly. I locked it. I did not flinch. I did not apologize. I walked into the kitchen and started the coffee pot. "I asked you a question," Linda screamed. She followed me into the kitchen. "Mark's boss left early because it was so awkward. Mark is furious. The kids were crying because you disappeared. How could you be so selfish?" I turned around and leaned against the counter. I watched the coffee drip into the pot.
Drip, drip, drip.
"Selfish," I said calmly. "That is a funny word coming from you."
Do not try to flip this on me, she said.
She was shaking her finger at me. "You walked out on Thanksgiving. You abandoned your family." "I did not abandon my family, Linda," I said. "I resigned from my position."
What are you talking about? She asked.
"I am talking about my job," I said. "My job as the maid, the cook, the nanny, the doormat. I quit." She laughed. It was a cruel sound.
You are being ridiculous, she said.
"You are my mother. It is not a job. It is what you are supposed to do. You help out. That is your role. What else do you have to do? Sit around this empty house and knit." That hurt. It stung. But it also clarified everything. She really did not see me as a person. She saw me as an appliance. A toaster that was supposed to pop up whenever she wanted bread. I poured myself a cup of coffee. I did not offer her one. I took a sip.
"Get out," I said.
What she said. She looked shocked. I said, "Get out of my house," I said. "You're kicking me out?" she asked. "Yes, I am," I said. "Until you can learn to speak to me with respect, you are not welcome here. And tell Mark the same thing. And if you want someone to watch the kids next weekend for your date night, I suggest you hire a professional. Because my rates just went up. And I am very expensive." Linda stared at me. Her mouth was open. She had never heard me talk like this. She had never seen me stand my ground. She looked around the kitchen, like she was looking for the old me.
The soft me.
The weak me. But that woman was gone. She stayed at the kids' table last night. "Fine," Linda spat out. "If you want to be a lonely old woman, go ahead. See how well you do without us. We are the only family you have. You will come crawling back." She turned around and stormed out. She slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. I stood there in silence. I sipped my coffee. I knew it wasn't over. Linda was stubborn. Mark was entitled. They would try to punish me. They would keep the grandkids away. They would not call. They would try to make me feel the isolation until I broke. But they didn't understand one thing. I had already been isolated. I had been isolated in a room full of people who looked right through me. At least now I could sit wherever I wanted. I walked over to my kitchen table. It is a small round table. I sat in the chair facing the window where the morning sun was coming in. I watched the birds outside at the feeder. I was alone. But for the first time in years, I did not feel lonely. I felt free. And I had a feeling this was just the beginning. I had a lot of years left in me, and I wasn't going to spend them peeling potatoes in the dark. I picked up my phone. I turned it back on. There were 20 missed calls and a dozen nasty text messages. I deleted them all without reading them. Then I opened my contacts. I scrolled down to a number I hadn't called in a long time. It was my friend Betty from the senior center. She had been asking me to join their travel club for years. They were planning a trip to Italy next spring. I had always told her no. I had always said I couldn't go because who would watch the kids or who would help Linda with the spring cleaning? I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times. "Hello," Betty answered. She sounded surprised. "Martha, is that you?"
"Hi, Betty," I said.
My voice was strong. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "It is early. Everything is better than okay," I said. "Listen, is it too late to sign up for that Italy trip?" There was a pause. Then Betty screamed. "Are you serious?" she asked. "I am dead serious," I said. "I want to drink wine and eat pasta and see the Pope." Betty laughed. "Oh, honey, we're going to have a blast. I will bring the paperwork over today." I hung up the phone. Italy. I looked around my kitchen. It looked different now. It didn't look like a cage anymore. It looked like a launch pad. I finished my coffee. Then I went into my bedroom and started to pack. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about reclaiming my life. I was done sitting over there. From now on, I was sitting front and center. The silence that followed that morning was heavy. It was the kind of silence that usually made me cave. In the past, if I went a day without hearing from Linda or seeing the grandkids, I would panic. I would bake cookies and drive them over just to have an excuse to knock on the door. I would apologize for things I didn't even do just to get back in their good graces. But this time was different. I spent the next 3 months getting ready for Italy. I had to get a rush on my passport because my old one had expired 10 years ago. I had to go shopping for clothes that weren't sweatpants or aprons. I went to the mall by myself. I walked into a department store, and a young lady asked if I needed help finding a gift for my granddaughter.
No, honey, I said.
I am looking for something for me. Something that looks good drinking wine on the Amalfi Coast. She smiled and helped me pick out flowy dresses and comfortable sandals and a big sun hat. I looked in the mirror, and I didn't see the grandmother who sat at the kids' table. I saw a woman who was going on an adventure. Linda and Mark stuck to their guns. They froze me out completely. Thanksgiving turned into Christmas, and I didn't get an invite. That was the hardest part. Waking up on Christmas morning without the noise of wrapping paper tearing and kids screaming. I sat by my little tree and drank my coffee. It hurt. I ain't gonna lie and say it didn't hurt. I cried a little bit. I missed Benny's sticky hugs. I miss Sarah showing me her new toys. But then I remembered the year before. I remembered spending 6 hours in the kitchen while Linda complained that the ham was too dry and Mark complained that I hadn't bought the right kind of beer. I remembered cleaning up wrapping paper for 2 hours while they napped. So instead of crying, I put on my coat and I went to the soup kitchen downtown. I served food to people who looked me in the eye and said thank you. I sat with a man named Earl who told me about his life, and he listened when I told him about mine. I felt more family love in that shelter with strangers than I had felt in Linda's dining room in a decade. By the time April rolled around, I was ready. Betty came to pick me up in a taxi. She was wearing a leopard print scarf and bright red lipstick. Ready to blow this popsicle stand, she asked. I locked my front door and checked it twice. Born ready, I said. The flight was long, but I didn't care. I watched 3 movies and drank champagne. When we landed in Rome, the air smelled like exhaust and fresh bread. It was chaotic and loud and beautiful. We spent 2 weeks traveling through the country. We saw the Colosseum and we rode in a gondola in Venice. But the real magic happened at dinner. Every night Betty and I would find a restaurant. We would walk in and the waiters would rush over. They would pull out our chairs. They would call us Signora. They would bring us the best table in the house, not the one by the kitchen door, but the one right in the center of the patio or by the window with a view. One night in Florence, we were eating at this little place with ivy growing on the walls. The waiter was a handsome man with gray hair and kind eyes. His name was Matteo. He brought us a bottle of wine on the house. For the beautiful ladies, he said. I laughed. I felt myself blushing. Oh, stop it, I said. We are just 2 old grandmas. Matteo shook his head. No, he said seriously. You are women with history. In Italy, we respect the history. The wine is better when it is aged, no. The cheese is better. Why would people not be better too? That hit me right in the chest. Back home, I was expired milk. Here I was vintage wine. I took a sip of that wine, and I made a promise to myself. I was never going back to the kids' table. Not physically and not emotionally. We got back to the States in early May. I was tan. I had cut my hair into a short, stylish bob that was easy to manage. I was wearing a silk scarf I bought in Milan. When I walked into my house, it felt different. The air was stale, but the energy was mine. There was a pile of mail on the floor. I sorted through it. Bills. Junk mail. Flyers. And one envelope that was hand-delivered. It didn't have a stamp. It just said Mom on the front in Linda's handwriting. I opened it. It was a card. On the front it had a picture of flowers. Inside it said, Mom, we need to talk.
Please call me. No,
No, I miss you.
Just we need to talk.
I tossed it on the counter. I had jet lag and a suitcase full of dirty laundry. Linda could wait.
I didn't call her that day.
Or the next. I waited 3 days. When I finally dialed her number, it went straight to voicemail.
I didn't leave a message.
She called me back 5 minutes later. Mom, she said. Her voice sounded frantic. Where have you been? I have been driving by your house, but it looked empty. I was in Italy, Linda, I said. I told you I was going. She went silent. I think she thought I was bluffing. I think she thought I was sitting in my living room crying over old photo albums. Italy, she repeated. You actually went? Yes, I said. And it was magnificent. I met a waiter named Matteo, who thinks I am a catch. I could hear kids screaming in the background on her end. I heard a dog barking. It sounded like chaos.
Look, Mom, Linda said.
We need you. Mark's mom threw her back out, and she can't help with the kids anymore. And I have to go back to the office full-time starting Monday because Mark's bonus wasn't what we thought it would be. We need you to pick up Benny from daycare and watch Sarah after school. I took a deep breath. There it was. She didn't want her mother back. She wanted her employee back. She wanted the free labor. I ain't doing that, Linda, I said.
What do you mean, she asked.
Her voice got sharp again.
I mean, I am not your babysitter, I said.
I am your mother. If you want to see me because you love me and you want to hear about my trip, then I would love to come over for dinner. But I will come over as a guest. I will sit at the main table. And when dinner is done, I will go home. But Mom, Linda whined. Daycare is expensive. We can't afford a nanny.
Then you figured out, I said.
You are the parents. You are the ones who bought the expensive house and the luxury cars. Sell the boat Mark never uses. Cancel the country club membership. But do not look at my bank account or my time as your safety net anymore. She started to cry. It was that angry, frustrated crying she used to do when she was a teenager, and I wouldn't let her stay out past curfew. You are ruining everything, she sobbed. No, honey, I said softly. I am fixing everything. I am teaching you how to stand on your own 2 feet. And I am teaching you how to treat me like a human being. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking a little bit.
It is hard to say no to your children.
It goes against every instinct in your body. You want to save them. You want to cushion the fall. But sometimes the cushion is what keeps them from growing up. A week went by. I went to my garden club. I showed everyone my photos from Italy. I signed up for a pottery class I had always wanted to take. Then, on a Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it, and there stood Linda. She looked tired. She had dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not her usual fancy dresses. She was holding a pie box.
Can I come in, she asked.
Her voice was small. I opened the door wide.
Come on in, I said.
She walked into the kitchen and put the box on the table. It is pecan, she said. I tried to make it your way. I probably messed it up. I looked at the box. It was a peace offering. I got 2 plates and 2 forks. I made a pot of tea. We sat down at the table. My table. Linda took a bite of the pie. She grimaced.
The crust is tough, she said.
It is not like yours. It takes practice, I said. You will get there. She put her fork down. She looked at me. She really looked at me for the first time in years. She saw the new haircut. She saw the tan. She saw the spark in my eyes that hadn't been there before. I am sorry, Mom, she whispered. I didn't say anything. I let the silence sit there. I needed her to say it all. I am sorry I treated you like furniture, she said. I am sorry I made you sit at the kids' table. I was just so stressed trying to be perfect for everyone else that I forgot you were the only one who actually loved me for me. Tears rolled down her face. I missed you, she said. And not just because the laundry piled up. I missed talking to you. I missed you being there. I reached across the table and took her hand.
I missed you too, Linda, I said.
But things have to change. I know, she said. I know. We talked for 2 hours. We hashed it out. I told her I would watch the kids once a month for a date night, but only if they asked me nicely and gave me notice. I told her I would come to holiday dinners, but only if I had a seat with the adults. I told her I was done being the silent helper. She agreed to everything. And then she asked the most important question. Can we start over? She asked.
We can try, I said.
The real test came 2 weeks later. It was Benny's 3rd birthday party. It was a backyard barbecue. There were balloons and a bouncy castle. All the neighbors were there. Mark's parents were there too, sitting in their usual lawn chairs holding court. I walked in the gate. I was wearing a nice floral dress and my Italian sandals. Mark saw me coming. He looked a little nervous. He walked over to me.
Hi, Martha, he said.
You look great.
Thanks, Mark, I said.
He cleared his throat. Hey, we set up a place for you, he said. My stomach tightened. I looked around. I saw the picnic tables set up for the adults. I saw the little plastic tables for the kids. Mark pointed toward the main patio table. Right there, he said. Next to Linda. I looked. There was a chair with a cushion on it. There was a place setting with a real glass, not a plastic cup. And right in the middle of the plate was a little handmade card that said Grandma in shaky crayon letters. I looked at the kids' table. It was chaotic. There was cake everywhere. Then I looked at the adult table. Linda was waving at me. She patted the empty chair next to her.
I walked over.
I sat down. Linda poured me a glass of lemonade. Glad you are here, Mom, she said. Me too, honey, I said. I looked around the yard. The sun was shining. My grandkids were laughing in the bouncy castle. My daughter was smiling at me with genuine respect. I took a sip of my lemonade. It was sweet and cold. It wasn't a perfect family. Mark was still a bit of a show-off and Linda was still high-strung. But the dynamic had shifted. The balance had been restored. I wasn't invisible anymore. Mark's dad leaned over to me. I heard you went to Italy, Martha, he said. How was it? I leaned back in my chair. I crossed my legs. I felt the sun on my face. I smiled. It was life-changing, Bob, I said. And let me tell you about this waiter named Matteo. For the next hour I held court. I told stories. I laughed. I ate a hamburger that I didn't have to cook. And when Benny came running over with ketchup on his face, screaming, Grandma, Grandma, I didn't jump up to wipe it off. I just kissed his forehead and said, Go see your daddy, baby. Daddy has the napkins. And Mark got up. He got the napkin. He wiped the face. I stayed right where I was, sitting in my seat, the one at the big table. And I knew right then and there that I would never sit anywhere else ever again.